Hello everyone, I'm Raj Dutt, the co-founder and CEO at Grafana Labs. I was lucky enough to open GrafanaCONline with our keynote along with Tom Wilkie and Torkel Odegaard. And I'm also in the position here where I have the last session of the conference on the business of Grafana Labs. So I hope everyone's had a great GrafanaCONline. We've certainly had a lot of fun putting it together. I think the last 2 weeks have been a really interesting mix of content that I hope people have found both educational and entertaining. Everything from managing beehives to preventing the loss of some really good wine to running some of our open source software at scale, and of course, Grafana 7. So at every GrafanaCon, we like to talk about the state of the business. And we generally try to be very open on how we're doing and share metrics around revenue and adoption. And this GrafanaCONline is no different. The reason why we do this is because we know our community is really interested in how the company is doing, how we're evolving, and it's always fun to share even details like revenue. So things have been truly insane over the last year. We've grown in just about every dimension. Our people, the adoption of our open source software, our funding, and our revenue. We feel more like a real company than ever before. I used to joke that Grafana Labs isn't really a company, it's more a collection of loosely aligned open source projects. And even with all the growth, we're really trying to stay true to our roots and double down on the things that we care about. So what do we care about as a company? Well, it's really 3 things in order. The first thing is our people. We really want to be a great place to work at and attract the best talent globally. This is all about culture, and it's really important to us. The second thing we care about is adoption of our open source software. We really want to build valuable software that our users love and use to solve their own problems. And we really care about adoption because it's what really builds and allows us to build our business. Without a community and without adoption, we really wouldn't have a company to speak of. And finally, we care about revenue. Obviously, we want to create a sustainable company, and we have ambitions to make Grafana Labs a leader, a world-class company that really makes an impact in our space. So like I mentioned, people is the most important thing by far. So I'd like to introduce you to Alice Farrell, our VP of People Ops, who will kind of dive in a little bit on our people, what it's like to work at Grafana Labs, and our culture. And then I'll take it back and talk about adoption and revenue. So please welcome Alice Farrell.
Hi everyone, I'm Alice and I run People Ops at Grafana Labs. People Ops covers recruitment and hiring and what might more traditionally be called human resources. I help Grafana Labs to meet our hiring targets, to welcome new Grafanistas to the team and try to help build a company that means that they want to stay for the long term. I've worked in tech startups for almost 15 years now, and I've worked remotely for 9 years. And honestly, I now can't imagine working in any other way. So today I'd like to briefly introduce you to the People Ops team at Grafana Labs and cover a little bit of context setting about why startups can benefit from bringing People Ops in at an early stage. We'll also talk about supporting global remote first teams and look at how Grafana Labs approaches that, covering some detail about our growth and our culture and how we support the team. And I have a really lovely team. We've structured the People Ops team to focus on our 2 key remits, which is hiring with our 2 talent managers, Dasha and Zach, and supporting the internal team with the work which Hannah and Gracie deliver. We're also structuring the team to better reflect the makeup of our company so that we've got good time zone coverage. So we've got members of the People Ops team on the west and east coast of the US as well as in the UK. And I joined Grafana Labs early last year when we were a team of just 37 people. In a lot of startups of that size, People Ops tasks is often covered by founders or office managers or a mix of both. You know, a lot of startups don't invest in People Ops until a much later revenue or headcount growth stage. It is, after all, a cost center. So why did Grafana Labs decide to invest in People Ops at such an early stage? Multiple reasons. You know, all startups need to hire. Getting those first few hires right is critical, and then knowing how to define what good looks like, where to find the talent, how to benchmark salaries, and how to transition what you're looking for as the company scales from your first few wear lots of hats and just get stuff done hires, right through to building out your leadership team and moving from generalist to more specialist roles. That all requires constant iteration and focus. And PeopleOps programs try to help ensure that you can keep the performance bar high and the candidate experience really strong whilst you're still growing at pace. You also then want to retain that talent. Hiring and finding good talent is usually listed as one of the biggest challenges for founders and CEOs in startups. Recruitment requires effort. It's a real investment of time and budget to get it right. So once you've found that good talent, don't waste the effort by not putting in place, strong foundations to help ensure that you can retain those great people for the long term. Nothing hits your go-to-market motion harder than churn or high turnover in the team. So focusing on hiring and onboarding and becoming an employer of choice early, and you'll build that engaged and high-performing team. And it's your team who are the real key to your success. Culture also happens whether you plan it or not, but if you're intentional about it and you take care to define it in a meaningful way, it can become a real differentiator in helping you to attract and to retain that hard-fought-for talent. Great people want to work for great companies, and ensuring that you've got a welcoming and inclusive culture can have a significant impact on your ability to scale the team. So at Grafana Labs, we've spent a long time discussing and trying to document our culture. It's a surprisingly hard thing to do. Culture for us is not ping pong tables and office snacks. We're not a co-located team. It's really just how we go about our day and our shared set of norms. And spending time thinking about it can really help drive how you want to work and operate as a distributed team. At Grafana Labs, we focus on having a one-team mentality, which helps influence things like how we structure our benefits. So, for example, we have a global 30-day annual leave policy. That's super generous in the US and relatively standard in parts of Europe. But as a distributed team, all pulling in the same direction, it's really important to us that we offer the same benefits to the entire team. And that's a really important cultural foundation for us. So finding the right person to be the custodian of your culture and ensuring that they can partner with the founders and the leadership team to really bake it into how you operate, that's really important. And PeopleOps, it's about people. But what does that mean? It means building a strong company and ensuring that the business has the right information to make strong data-driven decisions. That's true in any company, but especially so in a remote-first one. When your team are not in front of you, how do you keep your finger on the pulse and know what's going on? A key way is to base your people's strategy on information and not gut feel. We spend time gathering data from the first point of contact with a candidate right through to when an employee decides to leave the company. And in between, we're putting in programs which help support and develop our team and our culture, from things like continuous performance management right through to employee engagement surveys. And all of that is designed to help us make smarter decisions and to better support our team. And the final area I'd highlight is compliance. It's not sexy, but it's super important. Making sure you've got good documentation, tools and systems in place is crucial when you hit your first funding rounds, due diligence or compliance audits. It's also just good practice and a legal requirement in most locations, so make sure it's someone's day job. Okay, so let's look at our team and our structure in a bit more detail. Being a remote-first company, it's at the very heart of Grafana Labs. It's where we started, and as we've scaled, it's something that we've explicitly recommitted to several times when we were worried it might be slipping away. And there's no shortage of advice and suggested hacks for working at home, particularly right now in the current climate. Last year, Zapier completed a survey on the state of remote working, and they found that 95% of US knowledge workers want to work remotely, and 74% would be actually willing to quit their current job to do so. So why do so many people want to make that transition to remote work? Top reasons generally listed include things like the flexibility to work from anywhere, to save money, to increase time with family or pets or loved ones, and most importantly, because we feel more productive from home. And the whole world has been thrown in the deep end and trying out remote work at the moment. But working remotely, it's on a spectrum. At the moment, a lot of teams are trying it out under emergency conditions, and I guess we'll see how that impacts the future world of work. Companies like Twitter have announced that they plan to continue working in a distributed way, that they'll maintain their office spaces but make the work location their team's decision. Even Facebook has started long-term planning to transition to a more permanent remote workforce. I suspect, though, that a lot of more traditional companies, through need or desire, are generally viewing this as a temporary fix until life hopefully returns to a closer approximation of normal. This is not a normal working at home experience, though, and we shouldn't judge working in a distributed work style on the last few months. Most of us are balancing trying to work at home with homeschooling and various levels of restricted freedom of movement, and all of that contributes to much higher stress levels. A lot of more traditional companies, they've historically been pretty remote unfriendly. They're 100% office-based and unaccommodating to requests to work remotely. The next style is remote-friendly teams. They're usually fundamentally office-based, but much more open to having a remote team member when it makes sense, or to work-from-home requests. The risk with this style is that the office is still viewed as the powerhouse. I've worked in part co-located teams, and it actually makes my life much harder as a remote team member. It's too easy to get left out of the loop, and you end up kind of feeling like a second-class citizen. So the opposite end of the scale are remote-first teams, and that's the style of company that Grafana Labs is building. It's where most, if not all, of the team are distributed, and that puts everyone on a level footing. And we think it's important to call out the difference. We don't pay lip service to being a distributed team when it's convenient. We're remote first. And so why have we structured ourselves in that way? Lots of reasons. It's where we started with our founders, so it wasn't a plan that we came to eventually. It was how we began, and it grew from there. But we also didn't just end up there without some serious consideration. Being distributed has got many advantages. Talent is global, and we can hire really smart people globally and improve our access to great team members and build a stronger, more diverse team as a result. Our community is global and our customers are global, and it's important to us that we're able to mirror that. Many of our teams can take advantage of a follow the sun model, and we all benefit in terms of getting to choose the environment that we get to work in and being happier and healthier people as a result. And as we scale the team, it's been a real advantage to us to be able to recruit globally. We've brought some great people into the business at a much faster pace than we would otherwise have been able to do had we been restricted to hiring within a commutable distance of an office. So it's better enabled us to scale at pace. And our three co-founders, Torkel, Raj and Anthony, started Grafana Labs from 3 different continents. Torkel is based in Sweden, Raj is in the US, and Anthony is in Australia. So we were a global distributed team before we even officially founded Grafana Labs. And here you can see some of our original team, who are all still core members of the Grafana engineering team. Torkel is hiding at the back, and we've got Daniel and Carl in the foreground. And this was before we had official offices. And even though we're a distributed company, we do still invest in some physical spaces in Stockholm and in New York. They act as hubs for us to bring our distributed team together for things like sprints, onboarding boot camps, and as spaces to collaborate. We find that remote working works best when you get an opportunity to meet your colleagues in person, to build trust and rapport. And so we try to invest heavily to facilitate that, and we will do again when circumstances allow. And our team has been steadily growing since 2018. It was slow to start with just 12 new people joining the team that year. But we picked up the pace in 2019. We started last year with 35 team members and ended with 106. Last year was really a game changer for us. Our headcount moved us from being a pretty small tech startup at the beginning of the year to a proper company by the close. We built out our leadership team and really invested in building our R&D and commercial teams. And that growth is continuing this year. Right now, we've got 144 team members, and we've got plans to continue growing the team right through this year. We're currently forecasting to end 2020 with just over 200 global team members. And because of the way we're structured, most of those team members, they'll apply, they'll interview, and they'll accept a role at Grafana Labs without meeting a single member of the team in person. That's quite a leap of faith. And it's why we're trying to invest so heavily to make sure that we deliver a great candidate experience so that people can get to the end of our process and find it easy to see the opportunity in front of them, despite not having met any of our team in person yet. And so the last 5 years, they've flown by. To celebrate our 5th birthday last October, we hosted global parties in New York, in Stockholm, Berlin, and in London to bring our distributed team together to help celebrate the milestone. The 2019 picture on this slide, it was taken in Las Vegas at our internal after party following GrafanaCon 2019 in LA. And if we took the same photo today, there'd be triple the number of team members in that picture. At inception, we were in 3 different countries. By the start of 2019, we were in 11, and today we've got team members in 27 different locations. We're heavily concentrated in North American and European time zones, but we've also got plenty of outliers to that as well. We've got colleagues in South America, Hong Kong, Russia, as well as team members who are full-time nomads, globe-trotting on a semi-permanent basis. And so, what's the key to success for running a remote team? I think it varies, but at Grafana Labs, I'd boil it down to a few of our key values and ways of operating. We share openly and we default to transparency. It's one of our core company values. Transparency is about being as open as possible, and the core intent is to make sure that our distributed team can work smarter and make better decisions. And we share information in a variety of ways. We have a regular cadence of team sprints, monthly all-hands calls, and open sharing of documentation. And that means that we place real trust in our team to have the information that they need to make informed decisions. We hire great people, and it's important to us that we arm them with the insight that they need to be great at their jobs. And doing that is essential to making remote first work well at Grafana Labs. The second core value is that that's crucial for us is that we are respectfully empowered. We hire really smart people, and then we want to let them get on with the job which we hired them to do. We don't want to have a culture of micromanagement and red tape. We really encourage all of our team to be autonomous, and working in that way is essential to supporting a distributed team. When our team are in multiple time zones and communication between us, it's often asynchronous. We need to operate with a really high trust dynamic and ensure that our team are empowered to do their jobs and that they've got the context that they need to do so. So we also really try to believe in work plus life, not work versus life. And at times that can definitely be aspirational, but it's something that we're really trying to focus on. Working from home, it sounds like the perfect work-life balance until you've done it for a while and you realise that it means that work can bleed into the beginning, middle and end of your day if you're not really disciplined. Especially right now, whilst we're all more restricted in our day-to-day movements. So we're trying to actively encourage our team to find a balance that works for them and to make sure that they don't burn out. Working in a startup, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we try to use our time wisely to work hard whilst we're at work and to live well when we're not. And we offer a great deal of flexibility. And the way that we're structured means that we can't and we don't want to track hours. We care much more about output and results than we do about hours at a desk. And we've grown the team a lot over the last few years, but in our heart we'll always be a startup. We love the semi-organised chaos of building a company, and I think recognising that is sometimes half the battle to making it work. We'll likely go through multiple iterations of our normal and our structure before we stabilise, and we try to embrace that constant evolution and not to be afraid of the change. There will likely be a lot more of it as we continue to scale and build the company and to put in some more structure. And it's structure that I'd like to talk about next. But really at our core, we don't want to entirely lose our startup roots. And so this way of structuring our company has led to one of our best perks, which is the amazing team that we have and the amazing team that we're building. And that sounds a little cheesy, but we really do mean it. We're really proud of the group of people we're assembling, and our company and our culture is the team. And our team themselves list getting to work with really interesting, smart and open-minded people who are good at what they do because they're passionate about it as one of our top perks. And so I mentioned structure. Our team started with the intention of remaining flat for as long as possible, but our growth has meant that we've had to evolve that structure already, and we're likely to need to do that again as we continue to scale. As the size of our management team grows, as well as the size of our individual teams, we felt that it was the right time to add in a bit more structure. And so we're actively working on rolling out progression frameworks for our team. And progression frameworks are really just a way of turning a career into a series of steps. And they've got multiple benefits, but the key one is helping our team invest in their career development so that they can grow with us as we scale Grafana Labs. And one of the core principles of this structure is that we want to operate 2 tracks at Grafana Labs. The first is for individual contributors who perhaps aren't as interested in moving into people management to progress their career. The second track is to specialise in people management. And leadership at Grafana Labs comes in many forms, and we want to view people management as a career change as well as a promotion. And so you can see that we've got 8 levels, and that the individual contributor track goes up to the same level of seniority as the people management track. And we've been actively expanding our leadership team this year to bring in more people management support for our growing team. And our leadership team is made up of both senior individual contributors as well as management and senior management teams. And the data we're collecting suggests that we're on the right track. We have an incredibly low turnover rate for a tech company at 0.8% against an industry average of between 10 and 15%. Recent engagement surveys completed by our team, they returned great results, and with 93% engagement and a high trust score for our leadership team. As our turnover rate indicates, most of our original team members are still with Grafana Labs 5 years later, but we've grown the team so much in the last 12 to 18 months that our average tenure is 1.67 years, but 85% of our current team joined in the last 2 years. And so finally, we're also really delighted that all of our hard work has been recognised, as Grafana has been selected as one of the recipients of Inc.'s 2020 Best Workplaces Award. We're really delighted to be able to showcase Grafana, our team and our culture via this award. And just in case it wasn't obvious, did I mention that we're hiring? So thanks very much, everyone. I'll now hand you back to Raj.
Thanks, Alice. So as I'm sure you can tell from Alice's presentation, people is the thing that we care about the most at Grafana Labs. We've put together an amazing team, globally distributed, and it's truly a pleasure to be able to work with them every day. And Alice has been instrumental in helping us scale and evolve and maintain our culture as we've grown from barely 30 people when she joined just over a year ago to over 140 people today. But the thing we care about next after people is definitely adoption. It's more important than revenue to us at Grafana Labs, because without adoption and an incredible community behind our open source software, we really wouldn't have a business. So let's look at the numbers on how we're doing from an adoption standpoint on some key projects: Grafana, Loki, and Prometheus. So first, let's talk about Grafana. Well, the growth of Grafana continues to accelerate. Torkel shared some of these numbers at the keynote, but you can see we've got a really nice curve the last 5 years, and growth is continuing to compound, and we hope that it accelerates even further with Grafana 7.0. There are over 500,000 Grafana instances running that we see in the wild. Now, the real number is much higher than this, but many people disable reporting or deploy Grafana behind a firewall, but we're really pleased overall with this trend, and it's something we're watching very closely. The next project that I'd like to talk about adoption is Grafana Loki. Now, Tom Wilkie has spoken a little bit about Loki at the keynote. It's a project that we launched barely a year and a half ago. It just went GA a few months ago, so it's early days for Loki. But nonetheless, the Loki project has seen some incredible adoption too. And at this point, there's over 12,000 Grafana instances that are actively using Loki. And there's hundreds of customers on Grafana Cloud that are using Loki in production. So we're really pleased with the trajectory of Loki, and we've got a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline that will make Loki even better. If you're using Prometheus, especially, we highly encourage you to check out Loki because the two go together really, really well. So speaking of Prometheus, the adoption of Prometheus has been a thing that astounds us over the last year. And there are over 240,000 Grafana instances that are running at least one Prometheus data source. So if you do the math, that means that about half of the Grafana user base is using Prometheus at this point. Prometheus has gone from something that was really obscure to us just a few years ago to now the most popular data source in the Grafana community, and that adoption continues to accelerate. Now, Grafana Labs is very involved in the Prometheus community, and we participate actively and try to be good open source citizens, and we're going to continue to do so. Our commitment to Prometheus and that community is only going to increase over time. So let's talk about revenue, a quick recap. This one's a fun topic to talk about, and some people think I'm crazy for disclosing these numbers publicly. But it's become a tradition at this point, and I know our community is really interested in how the company's doing. So as a quick recap, at our first GrafanaCon back in 2016, we announced that we'd hit $1 million in annualized revenue at the end of 2016. And at the time, we were mostly a consulting company because we didn't have any products. Grafana Enterprise and Grafana Cloud didn't even really exist. By the end of 2017, we'd hit a $2 million annualized run rate, and most of that revenue was Grafana Enterprise. By the end of 2018, we'd hit a $5 million annualized run rate, and most of that revenue was Grafana Cloud. So it was really not only a nice growth rate over those 3 years, but our product mix, our revenue mix had really changed and evolved. We started as a consulting company, and by the end of 2018, most of our revenue was derived by Grafana Cloud. So we were really pleased with this, both revenue performance and the evolution in our business. We'd always had ambitions to be a product company and to launch a composable observability stack. It took us a few years, but by the end of 2018, we managed to have most of our revenue derived by Grafana Cloud. So that was the end of 2018. What about 2019? What was our revenue just a few months ago at the end of last year? I'm pleased to say that at the end of last year, we hit over a $12 million annualized run rate, and we're still growing at a really nice clip. So we're pretty pleased with that performance. And a lot of that revenue continues to come from Grafana Cloud, but also has come from Grafana Enterprise, which we've invested in pretty heavily over the last year. And a lot of our large Grafana customers are choosing to run Grafana Enterprise. They get enterprise plugins for data sources like Datadog, New Relic, ServiceNow. They get 24/7 365 support by the core Grafana team. They get additional features around security, reporting, and they basically get to de-risk their Grafana deployments by indemnification, Sarbanes-Oxley compliance. And we're really surprised, actually, in a way, that so many people are choosing to continue to run Grafana Enterprise instead of Grafana Cloud. But it really makes sense when you consider that many large companies still have their data sources behind the firewall, so to speak. And they want to access all these data sources and own their own observability strategy. So we're going to continue to invest in Grafana Enterprise and Grafana Cloud over the next year. So I guess GrafanaCONline is truly coming to an end now. I really want to thank 3 key groups of people. Firstly, our community, everyone who's submitted a pull request, everyone who just uses Grafana, everyone who's helped with bug fixes or features or even spelling mistakes on our documentation. Without this community that we're the stewards of, we wouldn't have a company, we wouldn't have a business, we really wouldn't be anything. So true thank you to our community. You give us our superpower at Grafana Labs. I'd also like to thank our customers. There's over 1,000 customers at this point, And without you, we also wouldn't have a business. And our customers range from people who pay us $49 a month for a Grafana Cloud account to over $1 million a year for certain Grafana Enterprise customers. So big thanks to our customers, and we hope that we'll continue to provide good service, good software to every one of you, and thank you for trusting us. I'd also like to give a special thanks to some key people on the Grafana Labs team, specifically Gina, Robbie, and Jerome, for putting GrafanaCONline together. Gina, Robbie, and Jerome have worked tirelessly along with our whole marketing team to make this conference a success. So thank you to all three of these groups of people. And see you at the next GrafanaCon. It's been a pleasure these last 2 weeks. It's been tons of fun. Definitely check out Grafana 7.0. That's the headline of GrafanaCONline. We're very excited about it and encourage every Grafana user to upgrade. I hope that we'll be able to see you in person next year, depending on the situation in these crazy times. At that time, I hope we'll have Grafana 8.0 ready to go, and Torkel and his team by that time would have been hard at work on the next big release of Grafana, along with much, much more. The Grafana Labs team is working on so many things that go beyond Grafana these days, including Loki, Prometheus, WorldPing, and we'll have even more interesting new products for you by next GrafanaCon. I hope by that time we're a company of over 200 people and over $25 million in revenue. Let's see, keep me honest. We'll definitely share the metrics with you next year. But in the meantime, stay safe and stay sane. And thank you for attending GrafanaCONline. Appreciate it.